Claire nodded, dunking the tea bag, watching the dark stain spread through the water. You talk about me to everybody? Eve looked stricken. No, of course I don't. I was worried. I thought maybe Oliver knew something that... Claire, you said it yourself. They tried to kill you. Somebody ought to be doing something about it. Him? Why not him? Eve jetted her leg, tapping the thick heel on her black Mary Janes. Her hose had green and black horizontal stripes. I get that you're all about self-sufficient, but come on, a little help never hurts. She wasn't wrong. Claire sighed, took the tea bag out, and sipped the hot drink. Not bad, even on a blazing hot day. Stay, Eve said. Study. It's a really good place for that. I'll drive you home. I'll drive you home, okay? Claire nodded, suddenly grateful there were too many places to get lost on the way home. If Monica had noticed her after all, she didn't like the idea of walking 3 blocks between the student streets, where things were bright and busy, and the callous hush of the rest of the town, where the glass house lived. She put the tea to one side and unpacked books. Eve went back to take orders from 3 chattering girls, wearing sorority t-shirts. They were rude to her and giggled behind her back. Eve didn't seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't care. Oliver did. He put down the tools he was using, as Eve bustled around getting drinks and stared steadily at the girls. One by one they went quiet. It wasn't anything he did exactly, just the steadiness of the way he watched them. When Eve took their money, each one of the girls meekly thanked her and took her change. They didn't stay. Oliver smiled slightly, picked up a piece of disassembled machine and polished it before reattaching it. He must have known Claire was watching, because he said in a very low voice, I don't tolerate rudeness. Not in my place. She wasn't sure if he was talking about the girls or her staring at him, so she hurriedly went back to her books. Quadratic equations were a great way to pass the afternoon. Eve shift ended at 9, just as the nightlife at Common Grounds picked up. Claire, not used to the babble, chatter, and music, couldn't keep her mind on her books anyway. She was glad to have an excuse to go when Eve's replacement bimbo boy about Shane's age took her place behind the counter. Eve went in the back to get her stuff, and Claire packed her backpack. Claire? She looked up, startled that somebody remembered her name other than, people who wanted to kill her. And she saw Kim Valdez from the dorm. Hey, Kim, she said. Thanks for helping me out. Kim looked mad. Really mad. Don't even start. You left my cello just laying around out there. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that thing? Way to be an asshole, but I didn't. Don't lie. You bugged out somewhere. Hope you got your bags and crap. I left them out there just like you left my stuff. Kim jammed her hands in her pockets and glared at her. Don't ask me for any favors again. Right? She didn't wait for an answer. Just moved off toward the counter. Claire sighed. I won't, she said, and unzipped the backpack. She waited for a few minutes, but the ground was getting thicker, and Eve was nowhere in sight. She stood up, stepped out of the way of the group of boys, and backed into a table in the shadowy corner. Hey, a voice said softly. She looked back and saw a coffee cup tipping over, a pale, long-fingered hand catching it before it did. The hand belonged to a young man. She couldn't really call him a boy, with thick dark hair and light-colored eyes, who'd claimed the table when she wasn't looking. Sorry, she said. He smiled at her and licked a couple of drops of coffee from the back of his hand with a pale tongue. She felt something streak hot down her backbone and shivered. He smiled wider. Sit, he said. I'm Brandon. You? Claire. She heard herself say, and even though she didn't intend to, she sat, backpack thumping on the floor beside her. Hi. Hello. His eyes weren't just light. They were pale, a shade of blue so faint it was almost silver. Scary cool. Are you here alone, Claire? She was babbling like an idiot, and didn't know what was wrong with her. The way he was looking at her made her feel naked. Not in a secretly cool, wow, I think he likes me way, but in a way that made her want to hide and cover herself. I'm here with a friend. A friend? He said and reached across to take her hand. She wanted to pull it back. She did, but somehow she couldn't get control of herself. All she could do was watch as he turned her hand palm down and brought it to his mouth to kiss. The warm, damp pressure of his lips on her fingers made her shiver all over. Then he brushed his thumb across her wrist. Where is your bracelet, little Claire? Good girls wear their bracelets. Don't you have one? There was something sick and terrible happening in her head. Something that made her tell the truth. No, I don't have one. Because she knew now what Brandon was. And she was sorry she'd laughed at Eve. Sorry she'd ever doubted any of it. You'll get yours, Monica had promised. Well, here it was. I see. Brandon's eyes seemed to get even paler, until they were pure white with tiny black dots for pupils. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The only question is, who will have you then? And since I'm here first... He let go of her, both her hand and her mind, and she fell backward with a breathless little gasp. Somebody was standing behind her chair. A solid warmth, and Brandon was frowning and staring past her. You offend my hospitality, Oliver said, and put his hand on Claire's shoulder. You ever bother my friend Claire here again, Brandon, and I'll have to revoke the privileges for everyone. Understand? I don't think you want to be explaining that. Brandon looked furious. His eyes were blue again, but as Claire watched, he snarled at Oliver and revealed fangs, real genuine fangs, like snakes that snapped down into place from some hidden spot inside his mouth, and then back up again, quick as a scorpion's sting. None of that, Oliver claimed. I'm not impressed. Off with you. Don't make me have a conversation with Amelia about you. Brandon slid out of his chair and slouched away through the crowd toward the exit. It was dark outside now. Claire noticed he went out into the net and disappeared from sight. Oliver still had his hand on her shoulder, and now he squeezed it gently. That was unfortunate, he said. You need to be careful, Claire. Stay with Eve. Watch out for each other. I'd hate to see anything happen to you. She nodded, gulping. Eve came hurrying out of the back, leather coat flapping around her ankles. Her smile died at the sight of Claire's face. What happened? Brandon came in, Oliver said. Trawling. Claire happened to run into him. Oh, Eve said in a small voice. Are you okay? She's fine. I spotted him before any permanent damage was done. Take her home, Eve, and keep a sharp eye out for that one. He doesn't take being ordered off very well. Eve nodded and helped Claire to her feet, picked up the backpack and got her outside. The big black caddy was parked at the curb, and Eve unlocked it and thoroughly checked it over, back seat and trunk, before putting Claire inside of it. When Claire was fastening the seatbelt, she noticed two things. First, Oliver was standing in the doorway of Common Grounds, watching them. Second, Brandon was standing at the corner, in the very edge of the glow of the street lamp, and he was watching them too. Eve saw too. Son of a bitch, she said furiously, and shot him the finger, which might not have been too smart, but it made Claire feel better. Eve cranked the engine and squealed out of her parking space, driving like she was breaking the record at a NASCAR race, and screeched to a halt in front of the house just a couple of minutes later. Okay, you go first, she said. Run for the door, bang on it while you're opening. Okay, go, Claire. Claire bailed out breathlessly and slammed the gate back, pounded up the paved walk up to the stairs as she was digging her key out of her pocket. Her hands were shaking, and she missed the keyhole on the first try. She kicked the door and yelled, Shane! Michael! And she tried again. Behind her, she heard the car door slam, and Eve's shoes clatter on the sidewalk and stop. Now, said Brown's low voice, let's not be rude, Eve. Claire whirled and saw Eve standing absolutely still 10 steps from the porch, her back to the house. Hot wind whipped her leather coat behind her with a dry, snapping sound. Brandon was facing her, his eyes completely white in the pale starlight. Who's your sweet little friend? He asked. Leave her alone. Eve's voice is just faint. She's just a kid. You're all just kids, he shrugged. Nobody asked the age of the cow that gave you a hamburger. Claire, purely terrified now, concentrated, turned back to the door and rammed the key into the lock, just as Shane whipped it open. Eve! She gasped, as Shane pushed her out of the way, jumped down the steps and got between Eve and Brandon. Inside, Michael said. Claire hadn't heard him, hadn't seen him coming, but he was in the doorway, gesturing her in. As soon as she was over the threshold, he grabbed her arm and pushed her out of the sight behind him. She peeked around him to see what was happening. Shane was talking, but whatever he was saying, she couldn't hear it. Eve was backing up slowly. and when the back of her heels touched the porch steps, she whirled and ran up, diving into the doorway in Michael's arms. "Shane!" Michael shouted. Brandon lunged at Shane. Shane dodged, yelled, and kicked the vampire with all his weight. Brandon flew backward into the fence, broke through, and rolled into the street. Shane fell flat on the ground, scrambled up, and ran for the door. It was possible for Brandon to move that fast, but the vampire seemed to flash from line to the street to reaching for Shane's back, and grabbed hold of Shane's t-shirt, yanking him to a sudden stop. But Shane was reaching, too, for Michael's head, and Michael pulled him forward. The shirt ripped. Shane stumbled in over the threshold, and Brandon tried to follow. He bounced off an invisible barrier, and for a second time Claire had his fangs snapped down, deadly sharp. Michael didn't even flinch. "Try it again, and we'll come stake you in your sleep. Count on it. Tell your friends." He slammed the door. Eve collapsed against the wall, panting and trembling. Claire couldn't stop shaking either. Shane looked flushed and more worried about the damage to his shirt than anything else. Michael grabbed Eve by the shoulders. "You okay?" Yeah, he never... Wow, that was close. No kidding. Claire? She waved, unable to summon up a word. "Where the hell did he come from?" Shane asked. He picked up Claire's stand in the coffee shop. He said, "I couldn't shake him. Sorry." "Damn, that's no good. I know." Michael clicked the locks on the front door. "Check the back. Make sure it's secure." "Shane, upstairs too." "Check." Shane moved off. "Damn it, this was my last killer t-shirt. Somebody's paying for this." "Sorry, Michael. I tried. I really did." "I know. That's happened sooner or later with four of us here. You did okay. Don't worry about it. I'm glad you and Shane were here." Michael stirred it to say something, then stopped, looking at Claire. Eve didn't seem to notice. She stripped off her leather coat and hung it on a peg by the door, and clumped off in the direction of the living room. "We were just attacked," Claire finally managed to say, "by a vampire." "Yeah, I saw." "No, you don't understand. We were attacked by a vampire. Do you know how impossible that is?" Michael sighed. "Truthfully, no. I grew up here, and so did even Shane. We're just kind of used to it." "That's crazy." "Absolutely." It hit her then there was another impossible thing she'd nearly forgotten about. In the press of panic, she tried to blurt it out, then looked around to be sure Shane and Eve were nowhere in sight. "What about, you know?" "You?" She pointed at me. He raised... "Oh, right. Upstairs." She expected him to take her to the secret room.